Tae, where are you going? Eun-woo yelled behind him, being extremely. They turned around to face his friend, and a car almost hit him. Jungkook heard the voice of someone calling Taeyong, so he lifted his head for the phone and faced him. Ed was making his way toward him. Just when they turned around and a car almost hit him. Taeyong, he yelled out of consciousness, and his eyes went wide with the fear. But thank God, Taeyong was okay. He seems to be in shock as he jumped back and placed his hand over his side. Jungkook noticed the boys were running toward him, and at the same time, he mirrored his action. He ran toward Tae with his heart almost thrusting and burst out in his chest. He jogged toward him and grabbed the boy's shoulder to check if he was okay or not. God, are you crazy? Who the hell stopped in the middle of the road? He shook his shoulder and scrolled him. He paused his lips and signed. He was safe. Nothing had happened to him. But that doesn't mean that his heart didn't stop beating for a moment. If something had happened to him, his father would have dug a grave for him. He didn't like that. He had to take care of someone now. They stood there shocked, with his hand were hanging his both side. Was he crazy? What was he thinking about being reckless? You? God? He asked, and they tilted his head to look up at him. He nodded weakly and lowered his gaze. He signed with relief and stepped back. Then he turned to come face to face with the boy, whose jaw were hanging to the ground. He wanted to shout, but the normal reaction people gave him. Whenever he went, Taeyong's heart were pounded loudly in his ear, and for some strange reason, his cheeks were heated up. They blinked and come out of his trace to finally his husband, to his best friend, who had been dying to meet him. Eun-woo, it's Jungkook. Jungkook, this is Eun-woo, my best friend. He couldn't even correct a word. It felt like his brain was not blank mode. It's not working. Eun-woo cleared his thought and thrust out his hand for Jungkook to shake. Nice to meet you. He smiled sweetly at him. They know by his look of his friend, he would demand an explanation. They inhaled and watching both of them, desperately praying that Jungkook would shake his head. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Eun-woo, he noted, while shaking his hand, and they signed in relief. He thought he would just ignore him and move on. I would have loved to talk with you, but we really need to leave. Our flight is an hour, he said, and making they formed. What? Where are they going? He never told him about anything or going anywhere, and beside that, he had university to attend. He couldn't just take him anywhere whenever he wanted. But they saved the question for later. Of course I understand. He smiled at him and gave a cloud to Tae, to which he shrugged and shook his head, telling him that he didn't know. Come, we need to leave. He turned around to Tae and saw him over his shoulder, where Eun-woo was swelling his eyebrows with a huge grin on his face. He pinched his index finger and thumb, together making a perfect sign, and mouth hot. They had urged to giggle, but he suppressed it and pressed his lips to stop his laugh. Bye. They waved his hand, and Eun-woo turned around to go with Jungkook. He placed his hand on the small of his back and unshredded forward for their small talk. Where are we going? Why don't I know about it? They asked, looking up at him, ignoring the head for his hand. Up the back, they looked straight in his head and ignored his question for the time being. Jungkook, where are we going and why? They had an urge to brush all the words we. He prayed that he didn't notice it, because they would be embarrassing. Like a gentleman that he was, Jungkook opened the door for him, and they sat in without any complaining. They know that he would get answers, so he kept quiet. After sitting behind the wheel, Jungkook started the car and speed off. Unlike you, sweetheart, I like to concentrate while crossing the road. Well, that was offensive. They opened his mouth to answer, but he decided against and wanted to answer. I'm going for a business trip. And I don't want you to be here by yourself. Paparazzi and all that stuff. Besides, you're not used to live alone. So I decided to take you with me. Don't worry about your classes. It's just few days, he said, putting on his wreath. He had explained everything, but they still wanted to ask him. Why? Is it so important to take him with him? They could be perfectly fine by himself, or he could leave him with his family. So he thought, but I can go to my parents for 2 days. In that case, I won't be missing any classes. They turned his face and he noticed the tension in his jaw, which he refused to understand. Theon, you're married now. Your parents will ask thousands of questions. If I leave you there, and I told you, it's not a big deal. He sighed and massaged his head with his finger. They clubbed. He felt strange about it. Why was he so to take him? For all they know, his parents were totally understanding and won't ask any question. So what he was thinking, they didn't want to argue, so he just nodded and mumbled a small okay. And after that he remained silent. Jungkook don't want to leave him behind, and it were annoying him to an extent. He was used to being alone, and now he had a bit to take everywhere with him. But anything could happen, especially when his lovely brother was out of there. It wasn't leaving him behind. The thought he had been trying to suppress lately were bugging him now. There wasn't the boy he loved. A good love. He didn't like him. It was just not his type. He'd always imagined himself with someone who was confident, blunt, who could think of him. And he was totally opposite of that. He was needy, he was scared easily, and he was submissive. He couldn't stand the thought of they being going back to his brother. He wanted to come out as a fool, a person who used him, and then went back to his lover. The thought tricked him off, because now he was married to him. Everyone knew about it. All the people he was know about there. Everybody knew that Jungkook was off market now, and he could only imagine what would become of his reputation. If they went back to Jungkook, the man he loved, it would have been very clear with him about the topic that without his knowledge or permission, they couldn't be in any contact with Jungkook. Not that he knew his brother. Out of anger, that he was still very much feeling, Jungkook had not tried to reach out to Jungkook. It might seriously harm him if he can face him with that. What did he couldn't be forgiven easily. The rumors about being the replacement would have hit the news if he had not paid amount of their mouth shut. But the empire was spread all over. Jungkook had only known they for months, and now in the short time, he couldn't trust him. It was not that and ran over his wife to another man. Even if he loved him, he had accepted to him as a wife. So he also had to forget Jungkook. He had to move on with him. Because he wasn't willing to be a replacement. He wasn't willing to be used. And he would make it a damn sure the boy didn't use him. Not even they. That was the only thought of bugging Jungkook. So what if they couldn't love each other? They couldn't at least stick together as a normal husband and wife. Not every couple had love between them, and they still work out. So why could they not? If they could live only as a friend or even with each other, he was connecting with that. He knew it was difficult for him to accept him, and he only did it for his family. But so did it. There was no difference, but the damage has been done. And if they both tried, they could at least each other peacefully. Jungkook placed his hand on his small lower back and unshredded him inside the plane. He had already asked Mr. John Theung to pack his necessary on his back. He was ready before he came back for the university, but he couldn't be bothered to give him time to pack himself, because like any other, he would pack a suitcase and he didn't have to the time of his hand. Jungkook greeted the captain and introduced Tae before going to their place. He sat beside Tae in their own seatbelt. They did the same. If he wasn't wrong, he seemed to be a leader. He found and he looked at his shaking hand, but didn't say anything.